Okay, let's go ahead and start. It's 4:07, and we have a quorum. Both Catherine and Artie are here, and they count as one today because Artie is Catherine's alternate. But we also have Ms. Darden, Morgan Doizaki, Grecia Lenes, and Preston Prince and myself. And that's a total of 6, which is more than half, so we have a quorum, so let's start. I've just had a question, members of the committee, from a member of the public who would like to know why it is we're meeting at 4 when most people don't get off work until 5. And I think that's a really good question. It's one that we had raised ourselves at that early pre-meeting. And so I open the matter for the committee members, and I'd love to hear your responses to that, and then we'll hear from the city too.
Yes. Hi, Grecia Lenes. I had the same concern. Unfortunately, I had to step out at the last meeting, which I think I intended to raise it then as well, but I think it's just we had to have it at 4:01 for the second meeting, and then we just continued it after the fact. But I did want to propose to the committee to see if folks would be in agreement to push it to around 5:30 or 6 p.m. when we think more people could participate in these task forces. As you know, I think that is all of our intention, is to get as much public input on this. So
other comments from anyone? No, you have to flip the switch.
Okay. So I'm just saying that this isn't rocket science. I mean, we have come to a lot of meetings, and so I'm not understanding why it's kind of seeming like we're just now in a starter's box on how to have meetings. We've always held our meetings after 5, anything that came out into the community, because people worked, so our meetings were either 5:30 or 6 o'clock. So for whatever the reason was to have one at 4, then it should have automatically went back to the evening hours. So this isn't something new. We've always held meetings in the evening time, preferably they usually start about 6 o'clock, where like we said, people are getting off work. So this isn't nothing new, and we just need to stick to what we're used to doing and not keep changing things up.
Does anyone have an opinion on the committee that's contrary to that? Okay, so it sounds like we, the committee, would like to meet starting at 5:30 or 6, and those of you at the city, can you accommodate us? Okay, good. So those of you in the public, how many would prefer 5:30? Raise your hand. Okay, that looks like like maybe half. How many of you would prefer 6 o'clock? Okay, so I see 6 o'clock. So let's, at the next meeting, let's schedule it for 6 o'clock. I have a request of members of the public. We have the person who usually scribes for us, who keeps notes on the white chart here, is not here today. Is there someone who's willing to keep those notes? And if not, I'm sure we can get a member of the maybe city staff to do it.
And I'm willing to, as an alternate, I can do that too.
Oh, that would be great, Artie. Thank you very much. Okay, so we have an agenda, and there are copies at the front for and the sign-in location if you don't already have one. We haven't even really begun. Welcome. This is the meeting of the Anti-Displacement Task Force, which the city has created because it is required by the Downtown Neighborhoods Community Plan and by the Transformative Climate Communities Plan and contract and various other obligations to do what it can to avoid displacing people who might be priced out of their housing or otherwise face disruption in their residence or their business location because of changes in the built environment. So that's our role. We really appreciate the people in the public coming and listening and contributing. Last time we met, we agreed that people might speak twice, and I think we put a time limit on it, 3 minutes, was that it? So, we're a small group, we probably don't have to get really formal, but just, we want to keep the thing moving and we do want to get through our agenda. So, starting with Artie, who so kindly agreed to do our scribing today, can you just tell folks who you are?
Artie Padilla, Director of Every Neighborhood Partnership.
Catherine Forbes, Professor at Fresno State.
Grecia Lenes, with Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability.
Patience Milrod, Executive Director, Central California Legal Services.
Preston Prince, CEO, Fresno Housing.
Morgan Doizaki, Central Fish Company, and the Chinatown Fresno Foundation.
Debbie Darden, Golden West Side Planning Committee Chair, also BayPAC member.
Thank you. Committee members, you've taken a look at the agenda. Does anybody have any proposed amendments, or can we accept this agenda as proposed?
So moved.
Okay, Ms. Darden has moved that we accept the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Preston seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Not hearing any opposition. Let's go on to number 3, meeting summary. We received a meeting summary. It was just quite substantive here from our last meeting, and it includes, yes, sir. No, we're the appointed committee, and but we are going to want to have input and response and reaction to the information we present, and that's a very important public function. I did. So I'll tell you one thing that we are going to be asking for input on today. One of the things we're going to do is we're going to provide some input on the Transform Fresno Avoidance Displacement Plan, which was discussed on the 15th of May, and that is something that we will be very interested in hearing your input on. So that's how it will work. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions?
Yes, I do. I have a lot of questions. And my first statement is that it doesn't make sense for us to even be here if you are the only ones that can vote on anything.
Go ahead.
So the displacement avoidance plan is the policy options for the recommendations that Fresno City adopted. That's all coming from you, right? And for other people who've been involved in the process. So when that agenda item comes up, we'll be talking about that as well. So it's absolutely crucial to have, for you to be
Yes,
here.
it is.
Thank you, sir.
If I can add something, sir, I think all we did was approve the agenda. If you have questions on the agenda, I mean, we're happy to discuss it, but I think we were just voting on accepting that this is a okay agenda that, yes, I understand. Do you have any concerns about the agenda that we would like, that you don't agree with?
So we're going to go ahead and acknowledge the meeting summary, and that's also available at the front table from the summary from our last meeting. And now this is the point where we are going to be very interested in your input on the Transform Fresno Displacement Avoidance Plan. I was out of town on the 15th, and so I wasn't able to attend, but I am, this should be attachment B. This is, Sophia, this is attachment B to this 2-hour meeting summary. So,
It's attachment B to your agenda.
to the agenda, well, right, the agenda is,
Right, there's a package, so.
right,
um,
there's attachment A, it's, attachment B is stapled to attachment A.
Okay, I apologize.
No, that's
Apologies
okay,
if
I
that's
just
not
want to make
clear.
sure I'm not missing anything.
Okay, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, okay, perfect. Okay, so my understanding is that on May 15th, there was a meeting, and there are, the agenda packet includes some of the results of that meeting. Unfortunately, it's not in color, so you can't see the dots, what color the dots are. But there were, at the May 15th meeting, people voted on different displacement avoidance mechanisms. And there were gold stars attached to some of there were stars. You can see on the agenda packet that there were some stars, page 5, page 6 and 7 and 8. You can see how people voted. They put sticky little circle stickers up and indicated in that way, apparently, what it was, the different avoidance mechanisms that they liked, the displacement avoidance mechanisms. So that's the beginning of the voting. I would really appreciate it if somebody who was at that meeting, were any of our committee members at that meeting? Okay. I wonder if you could report, and if you could just talk to us about what happened, and maybe use the packet as a way to explain what you heard and saw.
Yeah, and so for just general background, the displacement avoidance plan is attached to, as a requirement from the state because the city is receiving $66.5 million to invest in downtown, Chinatown, and West Fresno. So this is one of the requirements, along with a couple of other plans. But the reason this one's so important is because the state is requiring this, because oftentimes when you have like tens of millions of dollars investing in a community, a low-income community that has historically never had this type of investment, you have the unintended consequences of people being, pushed out because all of a sudden things look nice and, landlords can increase the rent, whether it's a business or a residential and whatnot. So the state, is requiring this, and they have to pick one policy, so a total of 3 policies for residential, policies or programs for to prevent displacement for residences, and a total of at least 2 policies or programs for businesses. And I think some of the discussions I think that we were involved in were general. I think towards the end we got into like a good chunk of it and I think it's reflected here where it's like, rent is really high and it keeps going high, and people aren't maintaining the properties, but yet they keep increasing it by I hear all the time, easily $100, $200, from one day to the next. So rent control was like, I think, an obvious one that came straight to the forefront, and I counted the votes on it, and it had a total of 17, which was the highest scoring policy all around. And then some of the other things that were mentioned were, protection measures from tenants, because again, one of the other issues I hear time and time again is folks just being kicked out for absolutely no reason, whether it's just because the landlord, wants to move someone else in that can pay a little bit more or whatever it is. So just cause eviction, where it's a landlord has to create an actual justifiable reason why they're evicting somebody. That was another one that came up to the forefront. And then the other one I highlighted was inclusionary incentives for inclusionary zoning, and that's essentially when a developer wants to come build something that there's incentives for them to include some type of affordable housing. So whether it's a multifamily or whether it's single family, making sure that there's, that not all of them are market rate, because we know, for a single family household, I think, I don't know what the average is, but I'm assuming it's somewhere around $250,000, $300,000 for a single family household here in Fresno. I feel like a lot of people who are, family of four on $25,000 cannot afford that. So making sure households can still live in communities that are in these neighborhoods where you do have these market rates. And as far as like the businesses ones, the ones that, and again, I'm highlighting, and I think something that we talked about in our group, which were you? I think Artie was part of it, was rental subsidies for businesses. So essentially, and I think we heard this last time from, I think it was Bobby, I want to say that, she ended up her rent got too high when her business, when they were redoing everything at Kearney Plaza, I think it was, she said. And so, basically creating rental subsidies for small, locally owned, minority-owned businesses was something that I think we discussed as a group and figuring out how that works. And the other one was creating some type of development of programs to do business development and retention programs. But I think that I want to say that was more or less, it was a robust conversation, but I think I was like looking back at these, and this was reflective of what I heard from the various people speaking. I don't know if Artie or Catherine want to add.
Ma'am, could you come to the microphone, or this gentleman? Thank you, sir.
Excuse me. You said that the federal government gave you this money to be split it up. Is this that $70 million that was supposed to be given to Southwest Side, because we are the ones that has the bad quality of air? Is that money?
So it's the state funding that provided this.
So that's a different one.
It's state funding, yeah.
It's not that $70 million.
But it's state dollars, yeah. Yeah.
So, we only get, what, 10% or 10
of that? I want to,
be given for our area.
So,
Yeah, but I'm talking about what is the project.
So I'm
Everybody
wondering,
that I've heard that supposed to be went up to qualified, but they never did get the money or the incentive for that. So I want to know how much is it supposed to be for our area?
so the total program I want to say is around, 30. But for West Fresno specifically, do you guys know the portion? I did it one time, and it was when it was still 70 million. It was 38 at the very beginning of the program. I know projects have changed, but at the very beginning, I think like right after the application was done, it was I think 38 million of the 70 were going. That's what I counted. But I know projects have definitely changed since 2 years ago. So we.
Well, you're supposed to do all of this before you come here, so you can tell us.
so we have a, ma'am, what we're going to do today, the real question, our job, we just have a little sliver of a job, and that is, how do we protect businesses and people who live in this area, so that when everything, the money starts getting spent, however much it is, because I'm not looking at that right now, but our job, what we're trying to accomplish is to make sure that people who live here can continue to live here, and that they won't get pushed out because someone's spending a lot of money fixing up the streets and doing the things that they should have done decades ago, and now they're finally doing it, and property values go up, and all of a sudden people who've lived here for decades find it difficult to stay. We want to protect those people's right to stay here. And so what we're trying to, the one contribution we're going to make is, what's the best way to protect people's right to stay where they are? They're homeowners, they're renters, they're business owners. That we want those folks who have created this community to be able to stay in this community. So we're looking at all these when you look at your agenda packet, then you see all these things with dots, and those are different mechanisms for making sure people can stay put, and they won't get pushed out. So that's our goal today, is as a committee. Artie, maybe you could retrieve the microphone. So as a committee, we're going to ask folks for your input about what you think would be the best.
And if we can get your contact info, either Barbara, myself, we can, yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you.
So can I ask a question, please?
Yes.
So as we're looking at the housing, for example, homeowners, that's a separate deal. But when you're talking about if push comes to shove and you're talking about renters, what actually would you even be able to put in place if someone is renting a house from someone who doesn't live in the city of Fresno or in the area? Because renters, if they choose to sell, is going to sell, and there's nothing you can do about that.
So some of the mechanisms here, I'm looking at page 6, the bottom set here, rent control, stabilization ordinances, and rent review boards. If there were rent control, there would be a requirement that a landlord not raise the rent just because the property values went up. And that doesn't matter where the landlord lives. The property is in Fresno, and the landlord would be bound by that. Similarly, just cause eviction, the landlord starts, rubbing their hands together like, yay, this is getting more valuable, this property, and I'm going to evict the people who are here so I can put somebody in who will pay me more.
No,
Can't do that with just
that's not
cause.
what I mean. A lot of the people here, well, I'll say some of the homes off in this area in District 3 and West Fresno are owned by people that doesn't live here, nor do they live in the city of Fresno.
Right.
So when you talk about building, if those people come and say, I now want my house on the market, how are you going to protect renters who are renting from them? You can't stop a seller from wanting to sell their property, even if they're renting it out
But
to a family.
if there's just cause eviction, then somebody who's got a lease, the buyer buys the property subject to the lease. And the buyer doesn't get to just terminate the lease because they buy the property.
But once again, I mean, we're talking laws. So if someone has signed a year lease and that lease is up, and now there's development going on over here, and that person says, well, that's my home, but I'm gonna sell my home, and they put a for sale sign up there, you can't stop them from evicting the renters. It's their home, they own it. So if they own it and they choose to sell it, what happens to the family that's renting the property?
So actually, the family that has the lease on the property has the right to occupy the property for as long as the
right to
lease.
buy it.
They don't have the right to buy it, but they have the right to occupy it as long as the lease gives them that right. So if it's a one-year lease.
You're not listening to what I'm saying. The lease is up. So as we well know, J.D. Strauss, I think that's their name, J.D. Homes or somebody,
J.D. Homes, yeah.
own homes over here in West Fresno. They now renting them out,
Right.
either low income or Section 8, whatever the case may be. If development is going on, they decide, development is going on, let me sell my 8 houses so that I can get my money and be done with it. If you have renters in that house and their lease is up, you can't stop that homeowner from selling their home.
If the
So
lease is up, I think you're right.
That's what I'm saying.
I
So
think you're right.
what happens with the renters if those people choose to sell their homes? What happens with the renters, the families that's there renting? So how do you put a
Yeah.
policy in place like that when homeowners are homeowners and you can't tell them what to do with their property?
Preston, did you have a comment on that?
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like what we are kind of being sidetracked a little bit by TCC and the work that has to happen there. And our work as a committee, I thought, was to start getting to know the demographics, getting to know the situations that you're describing, start talking about what are the policies so that we go back to City Council and advocate, whether there's a right of first refusal, if there's a sale that happens like that, and some program that helps renters become the buyer in the event that they live there. I think that's what we're really supposed to be doing, is start taking those situations we know about anecdotally, start putting data behind it, saying, these are the numbers happening in West Fresno, and then here's some solutions, and we advocate for those solutions back to city council.
So I understand that, so that's kind of what I'm saying,
Yeah.
it's not going off track, because you have homeowners
Yep.
that have homes here that do not live here, but they're rented out. So when you're talking about even in TCC, if the project is near there and it takes that home, if that homeowner sells it, there's nothing that renter can do. So are you responsible to ensure that that family has somewhere else to go when they have to leave that home? So
Yeah.
when you're talking about a policy, you have to look at that and wonder, is that a policy that we take on, or is that a policy that the city has to, or, like I said, how can you really hold that homeowner hostage like that? You can't.
Yeah, because you brought up legal issues that we don't know the
Yes.
answers to, market conditions. I think you've raised some really important issues that we get to now say, because my cursory understanding of these, I don't think they address that situation you're talking about. So I think we then say, as part of getting to what I think we're doing today at the TCC, is we could do three things. We can say, that's them, we have nothing to do with it. The second thing we can do is like say, well, they met, the community did their stickers, we'll support that. Or the third thing is to say, there's some situations we know about that they missed that we'd like them to explore, and we have some additional ideas. And so it sounds like you're bringing up the third area, let's bring up some additional ideas. I totally support the idea, because I think you're right, that there will be displaced people when a absentee landlord sells the house to a home buyer, not necessarily to an investor, but to a home buyer. A home buyer is moving in, so who has responsibility? The landlord, the new home buyer, to help that family in their displacement? The city, home ownership counseling, the right of first refusal? I mean, there's all kinds of things that we can start suggesting.
Right, so I'm just saying that could be the third part of it. But once again, I'm just trying to make sure that I'm being clear. It's not necessarily the homeowner selling to another family to
Right.
move in. If it's part of a TCC project, and that homeowner is saying, I'm selling my house, we just need to make sure that, what do we do with the renters who are living there and they now have to move?
So one possibility is for the city to actually have a robust relocation fund and process, which is a very huge problem anyway.
Yes,
And
that needs to
so
be the
that's, that, so there are a variety of solutions like that, and that may be something we want to add to our list, because I don't think it's on here. I don't think
Well-
TCC has got that.
All right, do you know if there are conditions on, like, the part of the funding is for solar upgrades for homeowners? Are there conditions on receiving that money? So let's say I want a solar upgrade, and do I have to hang on to my house for so long in order to get the solar upgrade, or no?
No, Courtney's shaking her head. So the other mechanism is an affordability covenant, where if you sell your house, if you don't sell it to somebody who's going to, you have to sell it to a family that is at the same affordability level as the family that was living there before. So there are a number of potential mechanisms, but I think Preston makes a really good point, and why don't we just figure out right now how we're going to proceed on this. The rest of our agenda tonight is we want to hear from staff on the draft downtown displacement report, which pulls together some data and some information about how displacement works. So we want to hear from staff. We want to follow up from the last meeting on the Jensen widening. We've got some additional information about that, and we're just going to keep telling the city engineer, we want you to come to this meeting, and at some point, I think the engineer is going to be here this evening. There he is, yay, welcome. And hold on just one second, Bobby. And then we want to hear from people about anything else they want to talk about. So my question right now is, do we want to which of these things do we want to do? And I think Preston summarized it really well. Do we want to say to TCC, okay, fine, you had your meeting, you put your little dots up. We know that this isn't the real displacement plan because this is just a start, as Councilmember Arias mentioned last time when he was here. This is a start, okay, fine. That's our job as a committee to come up with a better, more comprehensive anti-displacement plan. So we could say, okay, TCC, you put your little dots, great, fine, go ahead, that's your thing. We don't have anything to add to it. We could do that, or we could say, TCC committee, we want you to take into account our input on this, and we feel that these three mechanisms that you didn't name should be included in your anti-displacement plan. So, or some combination of those things. So, and I want to get through our agenda, and it's,
And
We're
I
moving
would,
along.
I would have a hard time going against the community's conversation that happened on June 15th. So I would prefer to go down Debbie's route and kind of say, are there some groups that that aren't protected within this? I think the idea of renters from absentee landlords is probably a group that may not be protected, and what we want to say is we want to make sure we keep an eye out for them. I think that we've heard loud and clear through this committee's 3 meetings that homeowners are, current homeowners are really important, and maybe we don't say that they don't have a mechanism here, but just to reiterate that we want to make sure current homeowners are protected, whether that is assistance for taxes for seniors, whatever it might be to, as the property values go up and they have pressures. So I think that I'd be comfortable talking about some groups that we know about based upon our conversations and have like a letter that goes to them that says, totally support what you're doing and we're gonna ask you to think about it a little bit more. And then I think we need to then go back and start creating our data and our better understanding of West Fresno so we can come up with our recommendations back to the city council, our charge.
okay, so the short version is identifying some gaps.
Yes.
Okay, and without necessarily prescribing, right? Okay. Any other thoughts on the committee right now about how you want to proceed with respect to this item for task force input? What kind of input do we want to have?
I would be supportive of just sending a recommendation letter with this, because this is actually pretty reflective of what I hear time and time again, of just rent increasing at a moment's notice and people just getting kicked out for absolutely no reason. I think there was like 2 cases in May that, there was some urgent situations where people's rent went up like $200 overnight because someone called code enforcement. And yes, there's laws to protect them, but implementing those laws takes a lot of time, a lot of resources that people just don't have. But yeah, I'd be very comfortable with just sending a recommendation letter to City Council and to the Outreach and Oversight Committee saying we're supportive of what the community voted that evening.
So is there support on the committee for a letter that also says, we commend to your attention these following 2 or 3 types of situations that we don't see covered in these mechanisms that are listed here? For example, the situation where we have low-income renters whose landlords are out-of-town property owners.
I think that, I feel like that's something, that was a very good point. I think that's something that comes up. I feel like that's something we as a task force can especially do some in-depth analysis of that, because I want to figure out what solutions there are. I believe Santa Monica has something where the landlords actually pay tenant relocation fees, and I think it's like 2 or 3 months worth of what the actual value is to assist with people, when people are being like pushed out to assist with that if they are being sold. So I think that is something we can look into. I just don't know, like, I think we're at the beginning of June. They have to submit something by the end of July, have something set in stone by the end of this month. So I don't know how much time we'd have to actually do a deep dive, so.
Yes, Ms. Crozier? No. So the only thing so the reason I keep pushing on this is I wouldn't like the city later to wave our letter under our noses and say, well, you said this was fine. So even if we don't have a specific recommendation about the problems, for example, that Ms. Darden raises, I would really like to say to the city, there are some gaps and there are some concerns. Is there support on the committee for a letter that does those things?
And I think we've identified, and I went through this again quickly, trying to understand it. So I don't see a whole lot of protections for homeowners, right? And so I think that we do need to talk about homeowners. And I think that we should talk about it in a way of homeowners who are displaced due to ancillary activities, not necessarily a TCC project, but something that, because that's what we're really talking about, is the unintended consequences, right? And I believe that the conversation on eminent domain is also again around Jensen, about the fear that the city's going to use eminent domain to take those homes. So I think that we can talk about no displacement of homeowners through the ancillary activities, because I don't think Jensen widening is part of a TCC funded project. And again, we are just making recommendations. What the city council chooses to do is what they choose to do. I think we should say that we believe that Uniform Relocation Act should be followed for impacted families, whether it's a TCC or a non-TCC funded project. And then I do think we should put in something that talks about the renters who might be affected as absentee landlords sell their properties and not extend rights to them or any kind of benefits to them or protections, whatever it might be.
So I want to, excuse me, sir, just 1 second. I promised Ms. Bobby I'd call on her, and then from you, if it's okay. Ms. Bobby?
Well, first of all, okay, I'm going to ask my question, but my concerns also is that, okay, now, you are communicating amongst yourselves, you're asking yourselves questions and, about this meeting and everything, but this is supposed to be a community meeting, right? Or then a input. Okay, I don't think a lot of the people who are here isn't getting the information because you are communicating amongst yourself as to what you should be doing. But you're not getting input from the community here as to what as to what their concerns are. But you also mentioned the relocation and like the sell or the buyer of your property. Well, even if you're a renter and you mentioned possibility of relocation fee, but what about the fact is that after the person is relocated, what about how much it's going to cost them to try to find another place? Because, a lot of people is on a fixed or a set income. And, and so even if you pay, have the buyer or the developer to pay the relocation fee, what about the next months and the next months and the next month? Because the cost is going to be entirely different. So, and then if a person have to sell their home or if they displaced or whatever, then you're talking about, the pricing as to what it's going to cost when, when they're no longer in, in their home, or in this community, because this is a low income area. So, most of us are on fixed incomes. And so, anytime you leave this area and you go north or wherever, it's going to be higher. So what's going to happen?
Thank you. Sir?
I apologize for being tardy, but I have a question that I thought I would get some answers to. I have property on this side of town, and I get about 3 or 4 letters each week on the properties to sell. Well, I have a problem with that because I know about, I need some information if you have property in the opportunity zone. Now, what are you supposed to do with that property? And person want to take your property or buy your property for whatever you say you want for it. And then the opportunity zone is here, and we never get an opportunity to utilize those entities.
Thank you for that question. I don't know the answer to that, but I wonder if someone from city staff could get your name and phone number and provide you an answer to that specific problem.
I think the entire community needs to know about it.
Okay.
You could give me a name and talk to me, but I think the entire
Well, then
community.
let's do this. How about this? We'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting, and we'll provide that information about how opportunity zones affect.
Yeah, and including, I'm a pastor, it includes the churches and the members around the churches, and we need to be very wise about selling our properties, because it's not a question about whether we're going to come back and be able to establish ourselves, but if they take the property, we're out of it anyway.
Okay.
So I wanna address the pastor. When you was asking that question, so are you saying property that you have that's not being utilized, or is it being utilized? And it ends up in the mix of one of the TCC projects?
I have properties that's rented, and I own property here, and they're trying to purchase all of it at whatever particular amount I'll release it for.
So I get some of those in the mail too, where people are now, you're getting things in the mail, wanting to buy your home and all that. I toss it in the trash. But that's one of the things that was mentioned at our first meeting. So I brought it to the city's attention because I've been in several meetings, and it was supposed to have been stated, but now I understand that there's no policy, but it was stated that if a project came and you resided in the house, you wouldn't have to leave if you resided on that property if the project was coming through. But if the project is coming through and that property that you own is vacant, then they have opportunity to offer you the market rate, and or if you're not willing to sell it, that's when eminent domain comes in. So they're saying it wasn't stated, but it was. I've been on these for several years. So I'm saying to you, as I'm reading some of this, if it's in the location of one of the TCC projects, then they're going to reach out to talk to you about selling it because it's in the line of that project, offer what they're going to offer, and you can find out if it's at market rate or not. And if you say, well, no, I'm not going to sell it, I don't want to sell it, now they can raise eminent domain then because it's in the lineup of the project.
All of our property is a part of opportunity zone.
So opportunity is
I'm with
in
you.
that project.
Hang on. Whether I own the property, whether it's being utilized, rented, or whether I live in there or whether it's vacant, there's still greater things to be done rather than just sell your property outright.
Thank you.
So I think you've, both you and Debbie have raised some great additional things. So there's speculative pressure happening to people, getting letters, right? And I think that maybe one thing we can advocate for is that the city fund some legal firm that someone can talk to, right? Because I've seen it happen in all kinds of neighborhoods. I was just in Atlanta looking at a neighborhood, and the owners were starting to get these offers. They would sell because they thought, hey, this was a good deal. and then the person who bought it would turn around and resell it for a much higher price, right? So I think that speculative pressure is really something we got to make sure people are getting some assistance on. Opportunity zones, just as a very quick definition, it is a federal program. It was started by, or initiated by Senator Scott out of South Carolina, that nationally that funds get invested in certain neighborhoods and not in disinvested neighborhoods, right? So they created these opportunity zones where investors, instead of having to pay capital gains, that they go into an opportunity zone, make the investment, and they get a deferral on their capital gains, and then they don't have to pay taxes on anything they earn over the next 10 years. And so, you're totally right, almost all of Fresno County is an opportunity zone, and there's all kinds of pressure happening through that. So I do think adding that to our conversation about how's that opportunity zone pressure going to affect displacement again. Again, it goes back to speculation, it goes back to these pressures that are happening. And, let's be quite honest, there's some people who own property who should be able to sell the property. If it's, I think, Debbie, you're saying if it's vacant and no one's being impacted, that no one's being displaced, then that may not be property. How someone chooses to, what they sell it for and how much they get is the market, that's what they do. It's really, we're talking about people. And I'm sorry, my brain just remembered, you also brought up businesses, and I don't see businesses protected in this displacement action plan. So
there are a few recommendations on page 8, right?
Page 8, okay.
That have to do with businesses, and whether they're adequate or not, that's a different question.
You're right.
Okay.
Well, I do think that this is really, again, going back to our letter, is to say we've heard these things about pressures and speculation, and we want to make sure. So I love the idea of the city has to help pay for some legal attorney who a community member can call up and say, I got this, what does this mean?
So, yeah, and information that's widely available.
Right.
So in case people don't want to talk to a lawyer, they can read it themselves, but it's available and accessible to people. Ms. Harris.
Okay, I had a question and you guys never answered that question, so I'm going to ask it again.
Okay.
Now, in order for the city of Fresno to receive those TCC dollars, they had to have a project in place. Now, in order to have a project in place, you had to have displacement and everything. That's what goes with the project. What I want to know is, why are you guys here now when the city was supposed to have done that in the first place and they did not do it? I want to know why you're here, and we're having a lot of pop-up meetings. It's just like when Graciela was here the last time. And she left and went to another meeting over off of California and Walnut. These are different meetings that they're having in Southwest Fresno back to back and at different times. We as a community is not being included. But the question I want you guys to answer is, once again, these TCC dollars, which was supposed to be in Southwest Fresno, period. Not anywhere else, not downtown, where they're doing it, is not supposed to be there. Because we're the ones that has that air, as Rita mentioned. Self-notice. That's where it's supposed to be at. But you guys have included it in the downtown and everywhere else. But those TCC dollars, in order for the city of Fresno to get those dollars, they had to have a project in place. And that project is supposed to have a displacement in it. So where do you guys fit in that? Why are you now here holding community meetings about displacement when that was supposed to have been the case from the beginning? I want you to answer that question.
Let me see if
I'm going to answer that question. and then Preston will correct me if I'm wrong. I know I can count on him. The city was supposed to have had anti-displacement measures in its original project, right? We are here right now because the city did not have anti-displacement measures adequately in its original project. And I agreed to serve on this committee, just me personally, I'm not speaking for anyone else, because I think it's better that the city should do this late than not do it at all. So our job is to figure out how to incorporate real protections to avoid displacement.
Then you guys should go back. You should even talk to the governor as a board and let the governor know that the city of Fresno do not deserve those TCC dollars because they did not have a displacement in place. You cannot receive those state dollars if you didn't have that project in place. So you guys being here is not right, and you're trying to force community meetings, and this is just a small portion of the community. So you guys are not, you're doing the same thing the city done. Just like with your 3 minutes, but you guys can talk all day, you can show slides, and we have to sit here and listen. We're the ones that's in trouble, not you guys. You guys get to go home wherever you live. But the point is this: we are getting the back end of everything because the city is not doing their job. They're telling you guys they have a deadline, and you're pushing these meetings. The city did not have a displacement in place. They're not supposed to get that money. But you guys are pushing it for them to get that money. That money is supposed to go back. And we want you guys to go to the city council and tell them that they're supposed to give the money back because that project did not have a displacement in it.
Got it. Thank you. Okay.
I
want to make sure. Oh, go ahead.
So, and I find it really interesting that we have completely different understandings of why we're here, right? And I think getting to that same page is what we really need to do. So I'll tell why I'm here, and then help understand, because you asked why are we here? So this particular group is not a public meeting. What it is it's a task force set up by the city to look at anti-displacement measures, not for TCC, but in general in the downtown areas, right? And what happened is TCC has their displacement action plan. We decided to say, hey, maybe we should weigh in on this thing. It's not our purview. It's not part of our work. It's what TCC and the Transform Fresno group is doing. And so all we wanted to say is, should we make comment on that? Because we've been charged with this broader conversation around displacement in this area. And so that's why I'm here, is to talk about displacement in general, and how do we protect neighborhoods from the unintended consequences of investment that's happening. So this group it falls under the Brown Act. So in my understanding, I don't think our attorney is here, right? Oh, there we go, sorry. I was looking for Raj. Should have known your, and you can help answer these questions, right? There was public comments on agenda items, but I don't think this is necessarily a public hearing or a public meeting. It's supposed to be getting input. And so I'm trying to address the question about why did we take a vote? I feel like it's like we think we're here as a committee that's been formed by the city council and the mayor to look at things. We're not here to solve, TCC is not under our purview. The Displacement Action Plan is not under our purview. That's Transform Fresno. I keep pointing at the city, but it's not, it's them over there. And so we're trying to say, hey, this meeting happened, should we because we have a 4-year charge, right? We're supposed to be here for multiple years.
Right.
And so we're supposed to be like asking the question of what kinds of things should we be advocating to the city council? What are the protections that need to be extended? What's the data of what's happening in West Fresno so that policies and ideas can be brought forward? That's why I thought we were here. And so, I feel like this is like, and I'm not saying I'm right, you're wrong, or you're right and I'm wrong. It's just like a fundamental misunderstanding of each other's kind of purpose. So I'm not trying to be negative. I'm just trying to say, like, I can see why this is really confusing because I had a different understanding of my charge. And when I was appointed by the mayor and the city council, I thought it was as to be on a task force that falls under the Brown Act that has public input, but it's not a public meeting per se.
Well, it's a public meeting, but we're the people who are supposed to come up with the
Well, it's like,
recommendations.
is a city council a public meeting? The same kind of thing happens is the city council has deliberation, they take comments, then they deliberate and they vote. And to me, that's the format, unless what we're supposed to do is, we're not, again, we were, I thought, charged under that very specific format. And if we're not, if we're gonna say like what we want to do is actually have consensus built, it's a very different thing. I'm totally for it.
Right, we actually don't disagree. I mean,
Okay.
I agree with you, but I just was, Ms. Topscott-Munson, hang on just a second. Ms. Bobby, I just wanted to make sure my notes are accurate about your input, about what it is that you want us to say to the city in response to the TCC plan. And that is the issue that you were concerned about had to do with the inadequacy of relocation payments for renters who end up relocating someplace but have a rent increase in their new location. Is that right? Yes, no? Thank you. I appreciate that. Ms. Topscott-Munson?
Yes. All righty. Good afternoon. Sorry I'm late. Trustee Kimberly Tapscott-Munson, Fresno County Board of Education. So I just heard what was added in, but let me first say what I thought I was hearing and then what I just heard that might have changed what I thought I heard. So in the original proposal, it did not have the displacement component in the original proposal that was sent up for the TCC.
Or it wasn't adequate. I don't know. One or the
Okay.
other.
Well, what we've been told is it was not done. It was not sent with the original proposal, and that's why it was kicked back. They were under the impression that they can compose it at a later date. So that's what we've been hearing at all of our community meetings is what truly took place and why we're here today. Okay, so are there any displacements currently set in the proposals for the TCC projects?
So I don't know the answer to that question. Here's why. Because our only job today is to figure out if we, as a committee that's separate from TCC, we don't have really any involvement in the TCC process, except maybe as in Grecia's day job, she's very active in that, but that's not what we're doing.
Okay, so that was the second part that I had just mentioned. As you were speaking, I made other notes then. So the second follow-up question was going to be, so where are we at today as far as that? But you're saying that that's not a part of your privy. So you are a panel that was created for Transform Fresno with the 4-year charge.
Not Transform Fresno.
Okay, so what did you just say then?
No, Transform Fresno is the TCC entity. We were created separately by the mayor and city council to look at displacement within the downtown and West Fresno neighborhood.
And so what's the name of that concern or project?
So the housing element, the downtown neighborhoods community plan, the Southwest Fresno specific plan, each of those legal documents that mandate the city to do and not do certain things, each of them says, you have got to pay attention to displacement. You have got to create an anti-displacement task force that will figure out, is displacement happening? Who's suffering from it? How can we avoid it? How can we prevent it? So our job is to figure out how to figure that out. It's not easy. People move for all different kinds of reasons and whatnot, and it's hard to say, well, this person moved because it's gentrification, or that person moved because their wife got a job in Miami. So how do you figure out, how do you get together all the numbers and all the information so you can see the trends? And then once you can see them, what do you do about them? So that's our job as a committee, is to find the information so we can identify when displacement is happening and to whom and for what reasons, and as a committee to figure out how do we prevent it? How do we put a stick in those folks so that people can stay?
Okay, so in order for the panel to be created, there has to be a concern. So is there a concern currently in our community for anti-displacement?
Yes.
Okay, and what is that concern?
The concern, well, one concern is that there's anticipated tens of millions of dollars to be funneled into this area, and we've talked about that ad nauseum, right? The TCC money that's coming in here, and the expectation is that there's going to be, gosh, the streets are going to get paved, and there'll be amenities and whatnot, and then property values will go up.
So you're speaking to the Southwest Specific Plan, then, is what you're referring to?
Our area is not only the Southwest Specific Plan, but this committee has the area that includes the Downtown Neighborhoods Community Plan area. It includes the Southeast, a little bit of the Southeast area, Adams, downtown, Fulton. So like the core of the city of Fresno, where there is actually housing, a lot of it not in very good condition, but there is housing people can afford. The concern is that in this area, when there's an infusion of dollars, it will begin to be unaffordable. And our job is to try to make sure it can stay affordable, that people can stay in their neighborhoods.
So then the way that we can do that is to make sure there isn't any displacement. And that was what we were promised at the beginning with the TCC, that there would be no displacement. So now you're saying TCC monies are coming into our community, and we're concerned, we want to make sure that there's no anti-displacement, but we were told originally that there will be no displacement.
Well, whoever told you that
came
was
down when we
smoking
first
something
started.
they should have been sharing with the rest of us.
So now we're beyond that point. So now we're looking at possibilities of displacement. So what areas, and is there an option for you to recreate the boundaries or the areas where you are using land that is currently not occupied?
So I guess I'm a little, just to respond in terms of the displacement, so part of our charge is also to watch like whether or not rents incrementally increase.
Well,
whether or
that
not,
will
right.
happen. So when improvement comes, rates increase.
Right, so, but I think that in terms of, but the improvements, right, may not. It's not exactly clear with a lot of the data in the specific improvements that are being, with this particular money, whether or not that's actually, like there's not a straight line to actually increase in home values and in money and in rental rates. So we have to come up, in order to choose the right policies, right, we have to come up with tracking mechanisms that track all the relevant data that make sure that we pick a policy and groups of policies that actually fit. So the other thing I would say too is like part of the displacement, anti-displacement work is also required by the state of California for the housing element for the general plan. And that particular part, if the city of Fresno and Fresno County kind of decide that, okay, we really want to push for affordable housing, try to figure out what that looks like and try to make sure that, even kind of the formation of more middle income housing or moderate or low to moderate income housing doesn't end up displacing people. So I think that it's kind of, I think we don't have the right tracking mechanisms yet, and I think that's partly what we're trying to do.
So how can we be of assistance to you?
So you're here, thank you. There are, it's put out the word about these meetings. If you know about them, tell people, spread the word. And as we go through this process, it will be necessary. It's not, the way the way you collect the numbers is gonna have to include people from the community. So you can have all these numbers over here, but they may have nothing to do with reality. So there needs to be, like, in the community conversations with people. And that's another way that people who attend these meetings can help us have those conversations, so people, people know. Like, my neighbor moved because she couldn't afford the rent. Well, that's just one data
There aren't
point.
a lot of renters in this community. Most of us are homeowners.
So
And
one of,
that's,
right, so I think one of the things in terms of being of assistance is like once we kind of get a data gathering model, for instance, to use this example, because a lot of people are concerned, rightfully so, about people who are homeowners and then being pressured to sell, as you were pointing out, as the pastor was pointing out. We can actually come up with, by collecting the right data, like the census tracts, where you have people who are elderly in those elderly occupied homes, that then we can actually talk to them about what they're facing and talk about what kinds of services they actually need. That's by identifying the right groups, and by identifying kind of inclusively the right groups in order to target services for people. So that would be
Okay, so
one
what's
example.
the next phase? What are we trying to
So
accomplish today?
So I think that we'll actually probably have to do work outside of meetings in smaller groups where we're actually, it's like kind of an interactive process where we're doing that data gathering so that the meetings aren't one shot. You can't, the meetings are about deliberation and kind of talking and presentations. But the other part, I think we need to be doing that other thing where we're actually going out and talking to people and collecting that stuff.
Right.
We just don't have a rubric yet.
right,
Okay. Okay.
Right.
So you're still in the planning phases of trying to figure out what all needs to be
Exactly.
encompassed in the plan.
Exactly.
Okay, so that's good to hear.
Yeah.
And we are here to be of assistance and to work with you, but we need a little more planning so that we know what is the purpose of today's meeting. What were we supposed to accomplish today?
Well, we are, we've already accomplished input on how we're gonna respond to the TCC, the mechanisms that they discussed in their displacement avoidance plan. And we've got some direction about how to respond to that. Now, in just a minute, right now, actually, we're gonna hear from staff. Amber's gonna talk to us about the draft downtown displacement report plan, or report, and that gives us information about the essential data that the city has at this point. And I think we'll have an opportunity to discuss it and talk about how we might augment it. And then we're gonna talk about the Jensen Avenue widening. Just very briefly, we have a city engineer here.
Thank you, I appreciate that, because we just want to make sure that we're being aware of our time and we're getting things accomplished in a timely manner.
And I think we're doing really well. So we're
Fantastic.
gonna move
Thank
to the next item on the agenda. And, you okay with that, sir?
I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I don't hear well.
Yeah, sir, you have 1 minute, okay, because you've spoken several times
I'm all
already.
right. Half a minute is good enough for me.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
We're talking about areas to be tracking and so forth and so on. How do we do this? How do we do that? Now, from Stanislaus down Belmont, Broadway, all the way over to the Visadero, we've already done that before. And I have people passing my church and they're upset because they've taken their properties and now they cannot get back in that area when the property was owned for 3 generations and they can't get back in the properties that was taken from their mothers and fathers. So I think we need to use some of those tracking mechanisms and try to figure out how we can do better than we did in that area.
Absolutely.
You know the area I'm talking about?
Yes, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
My 2 minutes up.
So Amber, if you would give us what you've got on the report.
While she's putting that up, if I could maybe I don't know, just to be on the same page, because it seems like everyone's not, I mean, this anti-displacement was given to the state by the city initially. However, it was not adequate enough. The state had to guide the city of Fresno and says, you guys need to get community input because what you guys did was not community input. So now we're in a tough situation because they still need to get this passed. And so we had to, we're trying to get this done. But this is a 4-year plan that's going to include a lot of parts of Fresno that this is unprecedented. The city of Fresno, I don't think, has ever had an anti-displacement plan, and they've affected a lot of places all throughout Fresno. Now, right now, Southwest Fresno, which I include Chinatown. Chinatown is on the other side of the tracks, 93706. I think Chinatown and West Fresno is getting like 80% of the TCC dollars. So I don't know if that helped clarify anything, but.
Thanks, Morgan. Actually, we're going to go ahead with the presentation right now. Thank you.
Okay, great, here we are. Good afternoon, I guess it's evening now. Good evening, my name is Amber Piona. I'm with the City of Fresno Development Resource Management Department. I'm going to be talking to you about the draft 2019 Downtown Displacement Report. Okay, so this is the presentation outline. We're just going to do a really quick background, then the development of downtown, because where we are right now, we have to go back to how we got here. Then we'll talk about residential data, then commercial data, and then conclusions and recommendations. Okay, so there have been a number of recent and current planning efforts to revitalize the downtown core and surrounding neighborhoods. There's a real concern, which we've definitely felt here tonight, that increased development in downtown and Southwest may result in existing residents and small businesses being displaced. This downtown displacement report is called for in the Downtown Neighborhoods Community Plan. It's also called for in the Fresno General Plan housing element and the Southwest Fresno specific plan. And in those plans, they talk about specifically what data that this report is supposed to reflect. Because we have several different plans with different geographies, we're using a very expansive definition of downtown, which includes all of Southwest Fresno, as well as the Downtown Neighborhoods Community Plan. So you can see there it goes up north and then goes east a ways. That's what this presentation is. It's an introduction to this draft report. So what is displacement? Displacement occurs when a tenant is forced to move by conditions that affect the dwelling or the immediate surroundings that are beyond the tenant's control. They happen despite the tenant having met all previous imposed conditions of occupancy, and they make continued occupancy impossible, hazardous, or unaffordable. Displacement can occur because a neighborhood is experiencing disinvestment or reinvestment. Displacement can be cyclical. Neighborhoods that have experienced disinvestment may then later appear attractive to reinvestment, which can lead to another round of displacement. So the development of downtown. Fresno began as a railroad town around the depot in 1872. The first commercial district was located just around H Street. 2 years later in 1874, a number of white property owners in Fresno met and agreed to not sell or lease land to undesirable communities that's non-white, communities east of the railroad tracks. And this agreement profoundly shaped the development of downtown. In 1936, Fresno was surveyed by the New Deal Homeowner Loan Corporation. These are the redlining maps. They assessed the credit worthiness of neighborhoods from green to red. Fresno's maps prioritized neighborhoods that were newer, neighborhoods that were wealthier, and neighborhoods that were whiter. You can see Fresno actually did not, it's actually a little difficult to see on this, sorry. There's very few neighborhoods that were considered to be green, but there's east or west of the tracks, you can see we're looking at red and yellow, which is C. So these designations promoted investment northward. However, those north neighborhoods have not been equally available to all Fresnans. So this continues in the 20th century. Between 1940 and 1950, Fresno's population grew by about 30,000 people, and many of those people went to the auto neighborhoods in the north. In 1957, the California Department of Highways, that we now call them Caltrans, developed a plan to develop a freeway loop around downtown, and formerly unified neighborhoods were cut into by highways. This is actually a photo from 1957 of the Tuolumne Street overpass under construction. Federally funded urban renewal projects also significantly impacted downtown. By the late 1960s, approximately 454 families were displaced by urban renewal projects, that's directly displaced, of which 30% were families of color. The economic downturn of the 1970s and 80s exacerbated the decline of downtown as retail shops, commercial businesses, and institutions joined the suburban exodus. However, in the last 10 years, public investment in downtown Fresno has increased. The Fulton Mall received a $20 million makeover. We've started to get bus rapid transit, and then there's the high-speed rail is planned on H Street between Fresno and Tulare, and of course, Transform Fresno. So that's where we are right now, with a downtown that has had a history of displacement, and now we're looking at some new investment coming in. So first, I'm going to talk about residential data. So neighborhood investments can increase property values. While increased property values can benefit property owners, renters can be negatively impacted in the form of rising rents. So these are the indicators that we looked at. Again, these were the ones that were called out in the various plans that established the need for this report. So residential vacancy, homeowner vacancy, median gross rent, median household income, rent burden, and then the conversion of affordable housing. My data came from the U.S. decennial census, so the 10-year census, and for 1960 to 2000, and then the 5-year data from 2010 and 2017. The blue boundaries, these are census tract boundaries. They're as big as they are to include the full sort of extended definition of downtown. So, Fresno as a whole has gone from a majority homeowner city to a majority renter city, and this trend is more pronounced downtown. In 1960, 45% of households in downtown were renters, compared to 25% of Fresno households outside of downtown. However, in 2017, 67%, that's about 2/3 of households in downtown were renters, compared to just over half, 51% of Fresno households outside of downtown. Rental vacancy looks at the percentage of rental units that are vacant. A healthy vacancy rate is considered between 7 and 8%. More than 12%, you have an unhealthy amount of vacancy. Too many rental units are empty. Less than 4%, you have also an unhealthy amount of vacancy. There's not enough housing available. So these are the trends from 1960 to 2017. The darkish green is Fresno outside of downtown, and the light green is Fresno's downtown. So you can see in 2017, that's that last data point there. In downtown, the rental vacancy rate is about 5.6%, and then for Fresno outside of downtown, it's actually lower, 4.3, which indicates that we need more rental units because we're getting close to an unhealthy vacancy rate. We also looked at homeowner vacancy. It's the percentage of homeowner houses that are vacant. A healthy homeowner vacancy rate is much lower than a rental, which is between 1.3 and 2%. So here is the homeowner vacancy rate for both downtown and outside of downtown from 1960 to 2017. You can see in downtown in 2000, there was a very high homeowner vacancy rate, and it has since dropped. Right now, in 2017, so not right now, 2 years ago, is 1.7%, and for Fresno, outside of downtown, we're looking at 0.8. Median gross rent. So gross rent is the contract rent, which would be how much you would pay the the property owner, plus the average cost of utilities. Median gross rent is the middle point, so half of households will pay more than the median and half less. Median gross rent has always been higher outside of downtown. Adjusting for inflation, median gross rent has increased for both downtown and Fresno outside of downtown. However, rent has increased more for renters downtown. And here you can see the general trend. These are all adjusted for inflation. Has just been rising generally. With 2017, Fresno outside of downtown is just under $1,000. And then for downtown, it's $787. And again, half pay more, half pay less. This is the middle point. Median household income, it's the household income is the amount of income earned in the last 12 months. The median is the middle. Median household income has always been higher outside of downtown. Adjusting for inflation, income has declined for both downtown and outside, but it has declined at a greater rate for downtown households. Okay, so here we see, again, adjusted for inflation, household income going down, combined with the previous charts which show rents going up. So we also looked at, instead of just dividing the data in half, what's the median point, we also looked at what into quartiles, so what the bottom quarter and top quarter of households are doing. So in 2017, the bottom quarter of households in downtown made less than $13,644 in the previous year. The bottom quarter of households outside of downtown made $10,000 more, so $24,534. In 2017, the top quarter made more than $47,682. One quarter of the households outside of downtown made almost double that, $92,458. So this is a chart showing downtown. The quartiles, the shaded portion is the top quartile, and the one at the bottom is the lowest, 25%. This is for downtown. And this is for Fresno outside of downtown. So when a household is spending more than 30% of their monthly income on rent, they are rent burdened. Increasing rent and decreasing household income has combined to increase the percentage of Fresno households that are rent burdened. In 1990, 55% of downtown households and 46% of households outside of downtown were rent burdened. In 2017, 62.1% of downtown households were rent burdened, and 56.3% of households outside of downtown were rent burdened. And that's what this chart is here. So this is 1990, the top one is downtown, and then the second bar there is Fresno outside of downtown. Green would be less than 20%. There's a mint green between spending 20 to 24% of your monthly income on rent. And then the top two, there's a red and a dark red. So all the reds are more than 30, and the dark red is spending more than 30% of your monthly income on rent. So we were also, people were concerned about the conversion of units that are affordable to market rate. Affordable housing covenants are deed restrictions that require property to remain affordable for a set number of years. If existing affordable units convert to market rate, then this could indicate that displacement is occurring. In the last 10 years, the city has not received notice of any affordable housing units converting to market rate housing. The two affordable housing projects in downtown whose covenants were set to expire recently, between 2015 and 2018, that's Bigby Villa and Silvercrest Fresno, have renewed their covenants. Next, we'll be talking about commercial data. Like residential renters, commercial renters can be negatively impacted by increases in property values in the form of rising rents. Unlike residents, commercial businesses could also benefit from increased sales. The retail indicators we're looking at is retail vacancy rates and quoted lease rates. The data here came from CoStar real estate statistics. There aren't as good of sources for retail data. Also, because the downtown that they use is the entire downtown triangle. So it's not just right around Fulton Street, it's the entire triangle bounded by the highways. Retail vacancy rate measures the percentage of total retail square footage that is vacant. A healthy vacancy rate is 5%. A vacancy rate less than 5% downtown would indicate that demand for retail space is increasing, which could drive up lease rates. In mid-2018, the retail vacancy rate in downtown was 5.6, and the retail vacancy rate outside of downtown was 5.3. But if you look just at the Fulton district, the vacancy rate is considerably higher. According to the Downtown Partnership, 12% of the ground floor space was vacant in Fulton district and ready to be leased at the end of 2018. So here you can see, this is the vacancy rates that for the downtown triangle for downtown, and then Fresno outside of downtown. And you can see that they've been sort of dropping from 2014 to 2018. Retail lease rates measure the average quoted cost per square foot. The quoted rental rates might differ from the actual rates paid by tenants following negotiations in any specific lease. Quoted retail rates are higher outside of downtown than in downtown. In mid-2018, the average quoted retail rate in downtown was 81 cents per square foot. And in Fresno outside of downtown, it was $1.13 per square foot. And here is a chart showing that. It seems that Fresno outside of downtown has been pretty steady from about $1 to $1.13, and downtown has fluctuated a little. So there are reasons to be concerned about the effect that increased investment and development might have on vulnerable residential populations in downtown. The downtown median household income is $25,000, or about half of that outside of downtown. Around 2 of 3 residential units are renter occupied, and 3 out of 5 households in downtown are rent burdened. At the same time, rental vacancy rates in downtown are slightly higher than Fresno outside of downtown, which indicates that Fresno just needs more rental housing as a whole. The downtown retail market is currently at a healthy vacancy rate of 5.6, and the average quoted rental rate of 81 cents per square foot is lower downtown than outside of it. With a healthy vacancy rate and a low asking rent, at the moment, the downtown retail market doesn't appear to be experiencing the high levels of demand that would be an indicator of investment-related displacement. Because many of the current residents in downtown would be susceptible to displacement, this is the time to explore policies and programs that could ensure that as revitalization efforts continue in downtown, that existing residents and small businesses are able to remain and take advantage of benefits if they choose. Just the task force. We recommend the task force take public comment on the draft 2019 downtown displacement report. Yes?
Thank you, Amber. Yes, ma'am, did you have a question?
Downtown, we're in this area. What about our area? You should do that on this area here instead of downtown area. That should have been done at this side.
So the definition of downtown is really huge, right? It is
Do you want me to pull up the map?
a lot bigger than downtown, and according to this definition, this area is considered downtown for purposes of this effort. because all of these areas on the map, see there's Jane Addams up on the left, there's Southwest Fresno, there's what we know as downtown right there, and then over to the right, there's portions of Southeast Fresno. So all of that area is where low-income housing exists, that is under pressure. And we know it's under pressure because people are paying more than 30% of their income for their housing. And so if people want to stay in their neighborhoods, the pressure is likely to get higher. And then how do we prevent them getting displaced? We want to keep them there if they want to stay there. So I have a couple of questions. So this is that when we talk about data, this is the kind of data we're talking about, but this isn't by any means everything, right? So in your best of all possible worlds, what else would you want to know in order to track trends or actually inform people about the risks of displacement? Like, is it happening now? How soon is it likely to get worse? What are the things that drive it? What are the specific neighborhoods where it's happening? Because I don't really think this data is telling us that, right?
Right, no, it isn't, and it's also from 2017, which is the most recent that the American Community Survey data is available. So it would be useful to have much more up-to-date data. It would be useful to have more qualitative data about like people who are moving and why.
Qualitative data, define your term.
Sure. So actually, I would maybe defer to an expert about how to define qualitative data.
I think you can, when we're talking about qualitative data, it's data that's gathered through narrative, basically, right? Through narrative and people's experiences. So people's experiences with people coming in and trying to buy their homes, or people's experiences with landlords, that kind of information. I was thinking maybe the city, like in terms of just kind of like looking at some of the tracking mechanisms that have used in other cities. One of the things that's really hard in developing a way to track displacement is that most of the studies are done in urban areas that are not like ours, that are done in places like San Francisco or Portland or Seattle. And most of the movement for anti-displacement is actually coming from those areas. So that we have to both kind of use what they're using, but also develop our own. So some of the other data we can collect, for instance, are things like permits for new construction, right? So you could look at whether or not the stock of affordable housing or what kind of housing is increasing, or permits for remodeling would be another way to kind of track whether or not prices are going to go up. We could look at eviction rates, you can look at foreclosure rates, I like the fact that there's both kind of this data on the demographic distribution, and then also kind of bringing that more, like aligning that more with the actual space. So using GIS data or that kind of data that we can get to. So I think that this is, I mean, there's lots of other stuff like, commercial and you have the commercial vacancy rates, which is great, which is super hard to come by. So, but there's other things we can also include. Some of that is going to be readily available already, and some of it isn't. Right?
Sir in the back.
Just a quick question. You have the huge area, this side that's described as downtown. Are you concerned that you're missing certain demographic bits of information as a result of having such a huge area? And are some of those, so if you subdivided that further, would you find out some things that might be valuable in this process?
Yes, I mean, I have the data for each individual census tract, and we could do more with that.
Okay, yeah, could you include that in the future report so we can see it?
Sure, that'd be something we'd be willing to do, yeah.
David Ruff.
Ms. Crozier, did you have a question? Could you just get the microphone? Thank you, ma'am.
My concern is you're talking so much about rental and expanding this area as downtown, then there is not a plan for single home dwellings.
Right.
So, no, absolutely. So I think part of what happens when you get data together like this is you're doing just the thing that you're pointing out, and what you're pointing out is you miss the specific details of a particular area, or by clumping all together, we're looking at, okay, the majority of people are renters. This is what's happening to the majority of people. So we absolutely have to attend to or respond to what you're saying in terms of figuring out where the specific areas that are more that the homes are more owner occupied, and then figure out what the anti-displacement mechanisms are for that. So absolutely.
Well, we need to know exactly what areas you're going to divide, you're going to displace, you're going to do whatever you're going to do. We need to see that. Yeah. We need to know what is going on, because right now this is a mass of confusion, especially for me.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, the pastor had a question and then you. Okay, sir. We're missing a oh, yeah. Amber has a microphone.
My name is Eddie Standifer. I was born in West Fresno in 1945, 3 days after World War II. I've been in this community all of my life. And I must first put a qualifier in here that you'll have to excuse my voice. I had open heart surgery a few years ago, and they cut my left audio nerve. And so I sound like I'm hoarse or angry or upset or something. And part of it is because I am. When I look at this proceeding, it upsets me 100%. You see, like I said, I was born in 45, and Africans, the people that we call African Americans, were not allowed to, as you pointed out, to move across G Street. I remember when the first family was allowed to move across G Street. I remember when D Street was a part of our community. And D Street, by the connivance of the city and the county and the state of California, without our input, drove freeway down through our community. And then after they put the freeway in, they developed a committee called redevelopment. And then they took everything from the freeway that we owned to G Street. Every single house, every single lot, every single business. And we still were not allowed to move across town. Now here we are in 2019, and West Fresno is the only place that the city of Fresno can go. They can't go past the San Joaquin River because they've built all the way up to it and can't go any further. When I look at the representation from the city of Fresno today that is here, all I see is Europeans standing in for the city of Fresno, ready to continue the theft of Fresno West Side. I'm just speaking for myself, because, like I said, I was born here. I used to walk up and down Fig Avenue from our city property to our country property. And as for me, and I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, I'm in the mood to have a secession movement from the city of Fresno to something that what we would call a representation of the West Fresno community, because we are not getting representation. You see, this meeting today is just a planning meeting so that you can get us out of the way and continue to take West Fresno. Now look at this. When we asked the city of Fresno to shut down that stinking plant over there, nothing ever happened. Do you really truly think and believe that that stinking Baker's commodity plant is going to remain when that new city college campus comes over here? You know, so I'm just saying, like I said, you know, I have one thing that sounds like I'm angry, and then my voice is telling you that I'm also angry. I am not happy with this proceeding, and so far as I'm concerned, this meeting can be adjourned until we get a representation of the rest of the community at a reasonable hour when they can come and express their true feelings.
Mr. Standifer, thank you very much.
So I have a question. And I thank that gentleman. Just like you, I'm born and raised here and trying to figure it out. This closure, all of us. And it's because there's supposed to be a deadline, if I'm not mistaken, at the end of June. And we really need to have an understanding what it is that we're supposed to be having ready to go to the city to say this is ready by the end of June. Now, another thing is there are a list of the approved projects that's supposed to be ready to go. However, we have to put this here in place. And we need to get a really good understanding as to, I'm sure we can even talk about whatever those projects are at the next meeting to indicate whether or not if anybody's homes or businesses are going to be interrupted. And if not, then the community needs to know. But I'm just saying, all this information here, I'm sitting here confused. Because I'm looking at this data, and once again, when you talk about downtown, downtown didn't used to be a part of West Fresno. It became a part of West Fresno when that $30 million rolled in so Ashley Square can open up the roads. So let's be real with that. So now that's a part of West Fresno. However, it is built up for those who have moved across town to come downtown and live. It's not affordable. It is not affordable. So and there was somebody who did retire out of the city that was saying that they really want the downtown area to be urban, like San Jose and so forth, and we don't have the urban dollars, but that's how it's being built. So once again, we need to get a clear understanding. Once again, we were talking earlier about what policy mechanism we need to put in place. Well, we need to etch those in stone in regards to home ownership and renters in regards to displacement. I do want to ask Sophia Pegalatis with the city of Fresno. They have built many things so far through here. Have you guys used displacement? I mean, when the school came, it did, and I know there were some homeowners who were willing to sell. I know some of those folks. But is there an anti-displacement policy in place with the city of Fresno?
So we're working right now with this task force on an anti-displacement policy. But if you'd like to know any recent cases of households getting displaced or eminent domain related to city projects, I do have Andrew Benelli here with the Public Works Department who can describe, summarize for you.
Actually, Andrew, we're going to call on you in a minute. I think it would be, I'm going to ask Arnie to talk about this in a minute, but Arnie and Morgan are both on the TCC Oversight Committee. We are not part of TCC.
No,
Let me just finish. So we don't have anything due by the end of June. We talked about our reactions. We're going to submit that, kind of the discussion we had, we'll submit a letter. But we're done with TCC pretty much after we do that.
Okay, so did I misunderstand that the city was rolling out something that needed something done, and then we were now overlooking at what they wanted to present, and now we're breaking it up to look at exactly what it is that they wanted to do?
So we are looking at it in a very superficial way. We did that earlier in this meeting, and we're gonna send a letter. But that's kind of, then it's like, hey, you know, you did this, you missed some stuff. You know, the stuff you did is good, but you missed some stuff, and goodbye, good luck in later life. And then our job as a committee is going to go on for the next 4 years in order to develop a very robust and data-driven set of policies that acknowledges the pressure on homeowners and provides and includes policies that will protect them, as well as businesses, renters, everybody else.
So I understand that. So that's why I'm asking the city of Fresno if they have anything in place, because I'm curious. There's been several developments over decades that they've done where they've had to displace some folks, whether it was business or homeowners. Does the city have something in place that they use that we could probably chime in on to see exactly what it is that they use, and TCC can probably have some of that adopted?
So the question is, does the city have a policy? I think the answer is no.
Well, we're waiting for the gentleman behind Sophia to answer. Isn't that what
Well,
she
I'm
was
just
relating
asking.
it to?
Because Mr. Benelli came today to talk about Jensen, which people were very concerned about. So I would like to give him a chance. Hold on, Ms. Harris. We're getting to the 6 o'clock hour, and we promised ourselves, each other, and you that we would get through our agenda. So we're going to do that. So Mr. Benelli has got about 6 minutes, according to my watch, to talk about the Jensen widening. And this is installment 1 of what will be multiple probably presentations, because we don't have maps yet, we don't have pictures yet. I'm hoping there will be. So Ms. Darden, is it okay with you if we move to Mr. Benelli to talk about the Jensen widening? Let's go ahead and do that.
Good evening. I'm Andrew Benelli. I'm with the Public Works Department. I'm the city engineer here. I can answer some specific questions, or I can just start about telling you the projects that we have on Jensen. We really have 2 capital projects that we're working on Jensen. One is from Elm to Walnut, and that is a street repaving project. It doesn't involve any street widening. We'll be just grinding the existing asphalt out, putting down new asphalt. We have a second project that it's not really a street widening project, but it does involve street widening. It is from MLK to Knight, which is to the west of MLK. That is a project, all of that land is vacant land. We are working with the owner of that property. We'll be putting in curb, gutter, sidewalk, and adding asphalt out to the ultimate limit. There's no homes in that area currently. So there's no need to buy any property. All of the property belongs to one developer. So there's no work on the that's proposed on the south side of Jensen for widening. It's only on the north side of Jensen between MLK and Knight. So there's no impact any existing homes. It's all vacant property.
And I'm sorry, Knight goes west or east?
Knight is west. It's near Walnut, so it stops a little bit short of Walnut. The repaving project goes clear to Walnut, but the curb gutter sidewalk project stops at Knight, where there's some existing homes there. So we also have street paving projects that surround the new campus property for Fresno City College. We'll be putting in curb gutter sidewalk on the west side of MLK, on the south side of Church, and we'll be repaving Walnut and putting in some curb gutter sidewalk all the way from Church to Jensen. None of those involve any additional right-of-way, other than right-of-way that belongs either to Fresno City College or to the investment group that owns the vacant property. So there's no single-family homes that are impacted. Now, the one caveat I would say to that is whenever we do any street project of any type, we make sure that the corners, the curb returns, which are the sidewalk right at the corners, those all have to meet ADA. That's federal law. ADA is the American Disabilities Act. So you see the new ones have ramps and they have the yellow pads, which are called truncated domes. We will be bringing all those corners up to current standards. I don't think we'll need any right-of-way, but we'll be doing some work there. On Jensen, it is, but not on MOK. We'll be doing a water main on MOK and a sewer line on MOK. But there's no pipeline work included on Jensen. Does not. From north to church, no, it doesn't. I'm sorry.
Street. King. Now, will that include from North Avenue all the way down to Church, or you are not going to do that? You're just going to do it at Annandale?
We are starting at Church, and we're going down to Jensen with new curb gutter sidewalk. And some pipeline work, but
not all the way down on the other end.
No, it just goes from Church to Jensen. It is around the Fresno City College property, and also that's where we're building a new park.
Okay, my question to you is, in the city's plan, this paperwork here is the city's, and it was passed. You guys have a four-way lane going from California Avenue at Walnut all the way down to Jensen Avenue at Walnut. You're going to have a light, a traffic signal there with left turning phases. This is you guys. So you know about this, right?
Yes, but even though those projects are planned, doesn't mean they're funded. This current budget, those aren't funded projects.
Okay, if it's not funded, then why is the city college included in it? This is the same project that the city college is included in. This is your guys' paperwork. And it states that, the widening of the streets. So I want to know why it is.
There's not a current plan to widen that part of the street. Which street are you asking about?
I'm asking about right now, this particular one, but in your Southwest Fresno specific plan, it goes from Marks, a four-way lane, all the way out to Jensen. This is in the Southwest Fresno specific plan. But right now we're talking about where the college is going to be. Now that area, this paperwork states, and it's the one with the college in it, you're stating, not you per se, but the city is stating, at California Avenue at Walnut, you're going to install a traffic signal.
We do have funds to install a traffic signal there in the current.
With left phasing. You're going all the way down to Jensen Avenue. This is a four-way lane.
On Walnut?
Yes.
The original plan for Walnut was to realign Walnut and move it over to where, what is the name of the street? Plumas. And you'll notice that there's the apartments and the other work that's been done there. Plumas has been improved. So when it talks about widening, it's probably really referring to Plumas. Am I correct on that?
No. This is what you guys passed. This is your paperwork.
I am aware of that.
And this is what I'm saying. This is what you gave the community. This is what went before the city council.
We don't have a plan to widen Walnut along the frontage of Edison High School.
No, this one is going down Walnut. You're going down by Church Avenue at Walnut. You're going to put a traffic signal there. At Church at MLK, this is say Jensen Avenue at Walnut. You're going to install a traffic signal.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, that's all the way down Walnut. It didn't say anything about Plumas. So this is what I'm asking you. This is you guys' paperwork. You're talking about putting a four-way lane all the way down California at Walnut. This is your paperwork. California at Walnut, all the way down a four-way lane, all the way down to Jensen Avenue. So when you're saying,
I can tell you those are not funded projects right now, not in this current budget.
see, that's what you're saying right now. And see, that's the point. You're saying right now, but this is what you guys going to do, right?
The traffic signal at Walnut and California is a funded project.
Okay, all the way down to Jensen at Walnut.
And
Ms. Harris,
none of that is
Can I
funded.
just
A
have
lot
to,
of that-
I have to ask this question, why are we making a distinction between what is planned and what is funded?
That's right.
Because I think people have a legitimate concern.
Right.
That if something is planned, it may get funded someday, and then it may happen, and it may be several years from now, but still people's property may be affected. So is that where you're going with this, Ms. Harris?
See, patient, that when I talked to you guys over at, when we was over at Maxie Park, I asked you guys, did you read this? This goes along with the Southwest Fresno specific plan, okay? So this is what you guys.
So let's get an answer to this question. What's the
Right.
difference between funded and planned, and why are we?
What often occurs with a specific plan or a general plan is you plan for development. So those widening projects wouldn't occur unless development occurs. Some of that property is vacant property. If you look at that area around Plumas, we've had a lot of development, apartments and affordable housing. So you see that as development comes in, incrementally the street gets improved. But that's different than a capital project where we either get grant funds or some other source of funding to widen a street. So a lot of these projects, they are planned to occur, but they most likely occur when development occurs.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying. So when you're developing the college, these streets are going to be wide. That's what I'm saying.
They are not going to be widened with the college.
That's what this says.
That's not accurate. They're not being widened with the
This
college.
is not accurate.
That statement is not accurate. They're
but-
not being widened with the college.
Well, this is what it says. The resolution approving plan amendment application number A-17-007 to amend the Fresno General Plan and Edison Community Plan from the following designation: medium density residential area 19.25 acres, urban neighborhoods for 24.44 acres, community commercial 10.
Ms. Harris, could you skip to the road
Okay, I'm gonna
improvements?
skip down to a college designation for 26.55 acres. This is your college, included in here.
So I'm going to ask this, because I think we understand that there is a disconnect, and I would like to understand it better, but I don't want to hold everyone here. But can we convene afterwards for about 5 minutes and see if we can get this cleared up? I'm really curious about this. I think people have a really legitimate concern when there's a plan, and then, yeah, there may be money or there may not, but people have a right to know what's coming.
Okay, one more
Hold
thing,
on, Ms.
please.
Harris, hold on.
Okay.
So it's after 6 o'clock, and there's one more piece of business I'd like to do. So Mr. Benelli, go ahead and you can put that down, and I just want to ask the committee, we've seen the data that the city has collected. There's I think a general understanding that it's not really the data we're going to need to do our job. So I want some guidance. I see the city attorney has left, but I'd appreciate some guidance about how to go about maybe a subcommittee of this committee. We're meeting with city staff to talk about how to get some much more robust data. Oh, there she is. Hi, it's Leah. So hold on just a second. We're trying to figure out how we can avoid Brown Act violations and still get some FaceTime as committee members with the city to talk about how to get some better data. So are we going to be okay if we have a subcommittee, not half of us, less than half of us? What's the rule?
It needs to be less than a quorum to have a subcommittee, so you can establish a subcommittee that is less than a quorum. The other alternative is, at a meeting such as this one, you could agendize a discussion of items you would like one committee member to bring towards a staff member. That one individual committee member could perhaps meet with a member of staff, have a one-on-one conversation, and then come back and summarize that for the remainder of the task force.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'm really interested in this data thing, Catherine. I think you probably are. Are there one or two other members, Grecia? Artie's like, no, don't look at me. Okay, Preston. Okay. All right. Thank you. I wanted to, and we'll convene afterwards and figure out, or doodle poll or something. Okay. Ma'am, you had your hand up, and I'm giving everybody a minute because I'm holding people over now, and it's not, people won't appreciate it.
My name is Chloe Wilba. I do live in this committee, and me and some other agents, I'm trying to be a homeowner, okay? But Fresno City has a very bad name amongst homeowners on the west side. They say, they're only trying to take our property. Some people use the word rape. But a lot of them do not know. If you give me 1,000 flyers, I will walk and make sure that they get out, because a lot of people do not know about these meetings. And we need to have them one place, not here and there and over there. You know, they need to know that they can come back here. I'm sure this church would make it available for you to have a permanent meeting place.
We will ask the pastor. He's been extremely accommodating and welcoming. We did want to, I just want to point out, this is a huge area.
I know.
And so we had originally intended to have some meetings in other neighborhoods also, because people don't find it easy to get to a neighborhood that's 6 or 10 miles from them. So we probably will have meetings in other locations. But you signed up when you came in? I did. That means we know how to reach you.
Yes.
And we will make sure you have 1,000 flyers at least a week before the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate that. Ma'am, you had a question, I believe.
Good evening. My name is Tracy Wilson, and I have a question. I have a couple of things, but one thing I see that you guys are doing, what's going on, we have an anti-displacement task force, and you said you're here for 4 years. The community that you're here for is this downtown area, and this area is ridiculous. This is more than half of Fresno. So you're going to have a meeting with half of Fresno community come out for 2 hours? It doesn't even add up. So in my opinion, this needs to be broken down. I see you have it broken down right here in your ledger into 4 groups. This is still too big, especially when you talk about the downtown neighborhood community plan. What it represents is so large. I mean, this is going all the way out here to McKinley and something and to way over here. It is too large, and then it's going over here to Kings Canyon or Chestnut rather. This is too big. So I don't understand how this could accurately represent where this side of town is at and where the east side and the north side is. You have to break this down. And that data is for Fresno. That's not West Fresno, and not everyone in West Fresno. I mean, I think that I understand you did your due diligence, and I appreciate what you tried to do. But 2017, I just think the data is just misleading. This data is like probably 2003. I mean, I've been in Fresno since 1966. That's when I was born. But I've been in Fresno all my life, and this is not adding up right.
So we agree with you about the data. And I think the city agrees with you about the data, and that's one of the reasons just a few of us are gonna figure out how to get better data. We're kind of stuck with the map. I agree with you, it's too big, and it is the area of Fresno where there's housing at risk, where people are gonna be having a hard time staying if there's like big cash expenditures.
Okay, so this is the problem. You talk about writing a letter saying thank you or whatever, but this and this and that. When I came in, I got it. I don't know who, to the city of Fresno, writing a letter saying we like this, but we don't like that. What I'm trying to say is what the people over here on Chestnut and Orange, what might benefit them and whatever, however your letter go, it's not going to benefit the people over here off of Church and Jensen area. So in the areas, it's big enough where you're going to have to write like several letters. And the city going to be looking at us, looking at you guys like, are they crazy?
You are 100,000% correct. That somebody at Orange and Chestnut is gonna have there's a different kind of thing going on. That we know that. That's why we have to get better data. And I mean, it means figuring out, and seriously, it's pretty daunting. You're right.
I'm not saying get a better data. I'm really just saying, can you close this in?
We're stuck with the map.
I think it's like,
because this is too big.
No, I mean, I think part of it is gathering data on specific areas, right? But then the other part you're saying is like community participation probably needs to be broken up too, and we have to do it differently. No,
Community
and I think it's
participation. This whole map needs to be broken up into how the city is broken up. The city is not like
So
this. Like
not
the
to have-
Callaway district should not be included over here into the Southwest Fresno because it's not included on the map, except for this map.
If I can, I don't know if this is going to clarify anything, but a lot of this stuff that we're here right now to do is specifically focusing on some of the TCC projects, and the Southwest is going to get a lot of stuff going with TCC. So that's a big map, and eventually our 4 years of displacement, avoidance, it might encompass the whole entire city of Fresno. But right now, to ensure, and that's why we're here more in the west side of Fresno, is because if anybody gets displaced because of TCC, that's our initial #1 task. I believe that TCC. Well, because we have to pass that to the state, and the city has to give it to the state. So the state is requiring that displacement avoidance within the TCC project is a priority for the state. Now, displacement avoidance overall is another thing that we're going to have to tackle on. But to make sure to focus on the TCC areas of it is something that we need to take care of. So that's why I believe I'm focusing more onto the Chinatown and Southwest Fresno side of things.
Well, when I first heard about TCT, it was like downtown Chinatown, Southwest Fresno. But now I guess the glasses or the map got better, whatever. But I see that it's including districts, areas wasn't said. And earlier, the chair did say that this meeting is not about TCT, it's about anti-displacement task force. But so is this also the CMAC?
There's some areas where there's TCC dollars going into that map, yes.
So right now, we trying to do something. Okay, TCT have to be, they have a deadline until June. And I understand we don't. You guys don't. This committee have a deadline until the 4th. So the people in the T community, this right here really should be about that right now, like the displacement for them since that deadline is due so soon. See, I'm just confused because the map is.
No, so I think maybe what we could do is think about and maybe hear from you like suggestion from other people about suggestions about process, about what would work. In terms of getting community input, because you're right, it's too big and it doesn't work in this way, right? So
Right, but see what I'm
maybe we
saying?
can brainstorm together about.
Right, because if Callaway area don't have nothing to do with the
Right,
TCT,
I know. Yeah.
why is that even on the map? But then you say, well, this meeting is not
for
about
literature,
TCT,
right.
it's about the anti-placement.
Yeah.
But right now, immediately, what we should be looking at is things that concern the people that's in the TCT. That's what I'm
Thank you.
thinking.
We take your point, seriously. Okay,
Give me 1 minute, that'll be fine.
1 minute.
Okay, now, when you stated that the TCC don't have anything to do with that, you with the Southwest Fresno specific plan, that's not true. That's the reason I told you guys have to read this book. Your Transformative Climate Community Program, Anti-Displacement, is in the Southwest Fresno
So let me
specific
tell
plan.
you what I meant by that.
Uh-huh.
Our task is not TCC. We're gonna send them a letter, and they're gonna do their thing, and Morgan and Artie and Grecia is also participating. Though TCC, that committee, they're gonna do their thing. This committee, our job is not TCC, and TCC is concerned with avoiding displacement. We're concerned with avoiding displacement, so there's an overlap in our mission. But we are not, that's its own thing, that's all.
Oh, okay, I understood you saying that, but you said you guys dealing with this Southwest Fresno specific plan.
I have it.
Okay, no, I say you guys are dealing with this. This is what you're talking about, right?
That's part of what we're talking about, but as you saw from that map, it's a much bigger area. So
Okay.
now the time at the tone will be 6:17, and I'm suggesting that we adjourn. And Mr. Benelli, I really appreciate your staying. I just would like to chat with you for a minute when you're done. Thank you, everyone.
Next meeting date, July 1st.
Yeah, so we've been doing this on the
First Monday of the month is what we've been doing, so
maybe July 4th.
July 1st. And then we considered here, but we also were concerned, we didn't know if the air conditioning was going to be adequate, and I don't know if the church is available on that date. Feels like the air is good, but I'll leave that discussion to you.
The pastor's going to tell us in a minute if it's good. Yes, sir. Yes. Is that acceptable? Thank you, we really appreciate it. No, 6 o'clock. Okay, 6 o'clock, July 1st, in this location. Thank you, thank you.